Welcome to the Mr. R Show, presented by the MRR Institute. This podcast is designed specifically for tax professionals looking to scale and modernize their practice by maximizing revenue through resources. Join us as we explore expert strategies, innovative tools, and actionable advice to help you navigate the evolving landscape of the tax industry. Whether you're aiming to grow your business or enhance your client experience, you're in the right place. Now, let's get to the show and transform your practice together.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Mr. R Show, brought to you, edited, produced, and I guess we could say distributed by the MRR Institute. As always, we work pretty hard here to get you some great topics that you guys, the listeners, are actually interested in. So again, content comes from everybody, whether we're at conferences, on the phone, emails, text messages, community chat boards, discussion boards, social media, you name it. We come up with these ideas because somebody wants to hear it. So today's topic, as you obviously can read in the title, you read in the description, we're going to talk about taking that leap. So if you're curious what kind of leap we're talking about, your mother would not be very proud of you because you did not bother to read the description or the title of the show, but we are going to talk about it. But before we do that, Chris Picciurro, welcome back, sir. I can't do this without you. How you doing?
I'm wonderful. Good to be back, John. Excited about our guest today. We've done a couple episodes on, this falls under that firm management, practice management, personal development. We've done a couple episodes on build versus buy a practice, and then also building the difference between growth and scaling. However, we've not really done a topic on taking that leap of faith, going onto that diving board, jumping up in there and seeing what happens. So we're really excited to have Katie Munoz on our podcast this episode. We are on a peer-to-peer mastermind group together. For those of you that don't know what a peer-to-peer mastermind group is, it's very prominent in other industries. Unfortunately, in the tax and accounting world, it's not as prominent, but it's a group that we meet a couple times a month for an hour, and we talk through things that are going on in our practice, things that are going on in our lives a little bit. And for those of us that feel like sometimes we're on a dinghy out there, that we're in an office somewhere in the United States, but it's hard to talk about some practice management, some sales, some marketing, all of those things, client issues with maybe the other tax or accounting professional in your smaller town. So it gives people an idea. It gives people a chance to just basically, have a Sunday family dinner, but we do it during the middle of the day and do it virtually a couple times a month. So amazing mastermind group. We have some awesome people in that group. Katie is one of them. She's definitely a leader in our group, thought leader. And we wanted to have her on to talk about taking that leap into firm ownership. So Katie, welcome and tell us about yourself and maybe some things about your firm, your background, location, and kind of what pushed you over the edge to take that leap of faith about 8 years ago into firm ownership.
First off, thanks for having me because I think that the experiences that I've had are kind of green, but have wanted to share them for a while and just didn't know how to. So I'm really excited to be here to be able to share what worked and what didn't with people. So I actually went out on my own probably 8 years ago, and it was a mutual, ending at a firm that the demanding hours where I needed to work 70 some hours a week. And they had this spreadsheet of showing who was working and how many hours. And I was kind of thrown under the bus every week because I was a mom of 4 and trying to get home and cook meals. And I kind of came to the firm owner and just said, this is not working for me. He said, it's not working for me either. And I said, okay. And I was kind of just forced into this, okay, you can go back out into the workforce and you can do this again, or you can try something different. And I had been thinking about it for months and just wasn't brave enough to do it. And then it was sort of like God was like boop, off the edge of the cliff and was like, well, you're doing it now. And so I was like, well, I can do this good, or I can, not even try. So probably 8 years ago, I ended up finding somebody else in my local town. We kind of merged together and brought our book of business and started collaborating, running our firm. And I had a little bit more young experience and newer experience, and he was older and had lots of wisdom and all the goods. Probably about 8 years ago, and I've had some changes since then, but have been good growing pains and, good experiences. I think, like, I say to my husband often now, why did I not do this 10 years ago? What why did I keep convincing
Right.
myself that this wasn't for me? And now I'm here and I'm doing it. So I think maybe my biggest regret is maybe not doing it a little sooner, in all honesty. Yeah.
Well, I think that taking that leap of faith. I started my practice when I was young. I'm kind of the opposite. I think I probably could have benefited from maybe 1 or 2 more years of experience, but then I wouldn't be to where we're at right now. And here's what I'm seeing is the theme of the rigors of a traditionally run firm drove a super intelligent, super talented, caring person like yourself that wants a good work-life balance out of that traditional firm model into more of a modern firm model that I know you're a champion in your firm, and you've gone through some changes also. We're going to talk about on this episode. So if you're listening to this and you're sitting in that traditional firm environment, quite frankly, we've got a friend in our mastermind group that's kind of in that traditional model right now that probably it would be greatly benefited by being in a more modern firm. So it's great to hear younger people in our profession like yourself that do recognize that balance and want to go into, do things maybe a more, I call it a modern way, but pretty much a more humane way. I mean, it really takes a toll on family, kids. I was on another podcast about changing, and actually I was doing something for Intuit for as far as scaling back to scale forward. I did like a little in I really thought deep about it, and it was the day my daughter was born, who's just turned 15, our second child, because it realized, wait a second, now we have two children under the age of 2 and 2 parents, but I'm an absentee parent. And she's born March 19th of 2010. I banged out over about 20 tax returns in the hospital, put my computer down when my wife was dilated to a certain amount, and they said, go time. And I was like, at that point, I sadly thought it was like, wow, this is cool that I'm such a hardworking dad and I'm like doing everything I can. And then it hit me and I was like, I'm doing everything wrong. What is wrong with me? So you kind of had that aha moment also, when firms, when you're graded based on the hours worked, it doesn't make any sense. Practice makes permanent. Practice doesn't make perfect. So when someone says, well, I've been in practice 30 years. Yeah. But guess what? If you've been doing that way for 30 years and you expect everyone else to do it that way, that might not be that might not be a good
Right.
thing.
For sure.
So,
Yep.
so you went off on your own. You had a small book of business that you had developed through personal relationships. And at that point, when you said, all right, enough's enough. I've got, I want to be have my mom hat, have my wife hat, have my, God forbid you do something for yourself,
No, no,
right?
no.
And
Yeah.
and you say, okay, I'm gonna be a firm owner. What did you do next? I mean, because I can imagine those first few months, those first 90 days are scary for someone.
Yeah.
Because it's like I remember driving to my office that I ended up buying a small book of business and thinking, what do I do when I get there? I don't have, what am I gonna do right now? Could you tell us about the first 90 days, if you could remember, and kind of what your thoughts were, and what was the next step you did? Did you partner with somebody else, or how did you go about it?
I think I remember having like this fear of, and I still have this to this day, I never want to not be able to learn and grow. And so I was like, okay, exiting out of this giant firm, who will I ask and how will I grow and how will I know more things? And I had this like impending fear that that was it. I had to be in this large firm with all of these other people to make that happen. And really the first thing I did was I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to NATP. I don't know what this is, but this looks like a conference that I could probably meet some people. And so then the next year I went to New Money, and the New Money conference was really kind of a unique conference that was done by Western CPE. It was kind of created for attorneys, firm owners. It was a little like a financial advisors, kind of like everybody who wants to grow a firm or know more about it. And it really gave some basics on foundational building, really getting processes and procedures and your networking. And I think that's what led me to the next step was just, okay, so I don't have to know everything now. I just have to continue seeking to know more. And as long as I can do that, really well, I'll be fine. And so I really spent the last 3 years networking and doing that. And then just coincidentally had to fly to Florida for a conference down there to meet business partners that were only 40 minutes away from me in my hometown,
Wow.
but obviously didn't know that I needed to fly to Florida to meet them. But went
Right.
there, had a conference with them, had a couple of nights of dinner, and just was like, that's what I want in my firm. I want to be able to have the flexibility to have online, organizers, but also I'm okay if you come into my office and sort of, I want to be modern and I want to be able to accommodate, a certain profile of clients. And I wasn't able to do that with the other partner I had. And so this last year, I did exit that partnership and enter into a new partnership in which our visions just align a little bit better. And that might be one of the learning points for me is just before you ever enter into a partnership or as you're sitting down and doing these goals, to really ask yourself what you want. And I don't think the partner you pick has to have everything lined up with you, but about 80% of it should be lined up. And the other 20 you're going to argue over and disagree on. But I think what it came down to was what I had wanted was I wanted to continue to grow and I wanted to continue to learn and take on different clients. And that wasn't what was going to happen in the old firm. And so I think had I have actually sat down and evaluated what was going to be important to me and where my 5-year goal, my 10-year goal, and I think those are hard because in 5 years, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do in 5 years. You don't want to make a guess, but if I could pick what I want to be doing in 5 years. I'm going to be laying on a beach in Fiji, right? And so I think just being realistic and setting those is not a bad thing. And I didn't do that from the get-go. So this next go round, that was what me and my new partner did was like, what is it you want? And if we don't agree, we're not going to enter into a partnership. And we just align very nicely on where we want to take our firm. That was a hard lesson, but I've grown from it and I'm better because of it. So
And where, for the people listening, and then I have a follow-up question. What's the name of your firm right now? And where are you guys physically located? Where are your clients typically located? Is it
yeah.
virtual, in person?
So it's MHPE CPA. And my partner was actually living in Alaska and this firm started in Alaska, but then he moved and relocated down to Washington State. And so we now opened a branch here in Washington State. So essentially now we just have 2 locations for MHPE. And he's actually down in like Vancouver, Washington, and I'm a little bit more up in Longview, Washington. Then we probably will open another branch or 2, depending on if the Vancouver area is something for us. But that was one of our goals, was to have a couple of different branches and locations to be able to serve a lot of businesses and bookkeeping. We do everything in our office. So
That's what I was going to ask you. So you guys are pretty full service. I mean, do bookkeeping, payroll? Can you tell us kind of about your mix? Do you do attest work? What your mix of services are in your firm?
yeah, my business partner really does a lot of the application and larger corporate returns. And then we actually have a whole bookkeeping department, a payroll department, and then a tax department. And they're all pretty separate. And that was kind of my goal was that, everybody kind of says like, find the niche that you want to do. And I was not willing to give up all of it. I love the idea that we can actually help businesses run internally and help them do the things right in every department, but that Katie can't do it all. So being able to break this up into the departments, then other people could do these things really well. I do like fractional CFO and sort of like internal management on a temporary basis, and that's actually what I love. And so helping those businesses decide when they're at capacity with employees and if they're actually making money on a certain projects. And so we actually do a little bit of everything. It's just we will have a department that will serve you and then you'll roll over to a different department, if you've got a tax question. And that leaves each department being able to focus on what they're good at instead of I'm going to do a little bit of everything. So
We're going to go back to when you went, when you went off. I'm going to say when I say on your own, basically moved into firm ownership about 8 years ago, and now you just went through a transitioning in business partners. Take away your relationships with your coworkers or your team. What was the reaction with your family, your friends, mentors, when, like you said, hey, I want to go off on my own 8 years ago? We know the trigger point, but what were people around you? Were they yeah? What were their sentiments? Because I remember mine, and it's interesting to think back at us.
I think my husband was 100% whatever you need. I am going to be here for you. And he still is to this day. I think everybody else was a little bit like, but you're not a CPA yet, but you don't have experience, but you don't know what you're doing. And I kind of got this big long list and was like, you're right, but I'm gonna keep trying. And I am kind of a personality where you tell me I'm not gonna do something and I am gonna do it, and I'm gonna do it really good. And so I think there was probably a little bit of fuel in there to be like, I think this is going against the grain of what everybody thinks will happen and that I will fail and that you can't run a business and have I have 6 kids. You can't run a business and have 6 kids. And I coach 2 volleyball teams right now. One is a high school team, right? You can't possibly do those things, and I'm probably a little bit overloaded at the moment. But I don't think there was a lot of super great support minus my husband, and I just kind of had to grin and bear it and say, "I know, but I think this is it. I think this is it." And just had to hold steady with it. Yeah.
No, that's cool. Now that I think about it, and I always talk about the gap and the gain, the Sting book, but don't let the other people living in their gap put the gap on you. You know what I mean? You got to live in your own gain. And I think about like most, I grew up in a very blue collar area right outside of Detroit. So I didn't really know people that owned their own business except my grandfather owned one. So I was like, it seems so risky, right? It's like, okay, if you've ever read Rich Dad Poor Dad, the path is get a job, go to college, boom, 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 boom. And it's like, I'm thinking, I don't know. I just had something in my mind saying, no, I'm more of an entrepreneur that happens to do the CPA stuff. And you mentioned having a supportive spouse is a game changer for a lot of people. For me, I'm very blessed. I started my practice about a year and a half before I met my wife. So I look at it like I didn't have any risk. Like I didn't have any children. I didn't have a spouse. I hadn't even met her yet. And so what did I have to lose? I had everything to bet on myself. I didn't have 6 kids. I wasn't coaching baseball. You know what I mean? And so, but having someone supportive in your, a support system, it doesn't have to be a spouse. It could be anyone, just 1 or 2 people that's like your fan club can go a long way, because a lot of time people, I don't know why they question things. Maybe they're just afraid they're going to lose you, or they're going to, well, I don't know. I don't know what the story is on
Well,
that, but
and I just think there is such a giant stigma, which we have all talked about this in the accounting industry of that, oh, if you're going to go on your own, then you must be working those 50 hours to run that practice. And I don't want to pretend that the first couple years wasn't a ton of sweat equity. It absolutely was. I was the one staying late at night if there was something that needed to be done. There was even the first years that I was mopping the floors and wiping off desks after everybody left. Like I have done it all to make sure that I could afford paying my employees. And I don't want anybody to think that you're just going to walk into this blissful, life. But years into this, I know that hard work was worth it. And really then in the experience that I had in exiting and just recently January, right, from this other firm, I I check in with my employees. I want to make sure they are okay. I will not be in charge of you not going to your daughter's ballet recital. If you have a recital, you are going, put it on the calendar. Like I'm not your micromanager and I will not be managing you and your children's life or your family's life. And so when I chose to leave this other firm, I let everybody know and was like, hey, it's kind of similar to like a merger. Like there is room for everybody who'd like to join. And everybody left that other firm, all my assistants, all my front desk gals, all my preparers, minus the other partner and his daughter stayed in the other half of the firm, and the other 6 or 7 employees came with me. And that meant a lot to me because what that meant was, A, they kind of blindly did it. They kind of just said, Katie, we trust you, and wherever you go, we're going because this is what you've built, and this is great. We don't want to work for anybody else. And that was really like, wow, are you guys sure? I like didn't even know about like what our retirement packages are. I have to like redo like, they'd had time and service in my firm, but as we enter into a new firm, who's honoring that? Or, all these questions. And they were like, no, we don't really care. And there was things we had to pan out and discuss when extra time paid off and things, but I know that then what I did before was all of the right things if these people came with me. And I want to continue to make sure that we're doing those things for these people because without them coming with me to this new firm, we wouldn't have had just a really nice, smooth, transaction of all of the clients coming together and all the hard work they've done in the last 3 months. I'm like high-fiving them. You guys are amazing. So there's there's that pride too, that knowing that I probably did some things right then, right? That's nice. That's a
Oh,
little
absolutely.
icing on the cake.
Well, as a firm owner, I mean, I've been doing this for over 20 years. There are times, and luckily now, not anymore, but if you've been in business long enough, you've either paid everyone and you've not got paid, or you've put your essentially, put your payroll on a credit card at some point. You have had. So if you've done that or you're worried about that, it's going to happen, but you've got to have faith, especially when you grow. Sometimes you have to deploy some cash and but then in the bigger picture, then it might give you a symptom. So for us, when we ran into some cash flow issues, a while, about 10, 12 years ago, it was more of a symptom of, well, my prices really weren't where they needed to be. It wasn't that I had bad clients. It wasn't that I was out, spending money on a Lamborghini. It just, we weren't in line. And so that we got through it. You determine what's the root of it. Let your pride go to the side a little and say, why is this? Like, win and learn, don't win and lose, win and learn. So you've done that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think something else too that probably took me years to realize was I thought that running this firm meant that I had to be good at everything and I had to do everything. And I think the probably in the top 5 hardest things is being able to say, "Yeah, I probably can do that better, but I'm not going to, because I could
Oh,
teach
yeah.
somebody else to do this and I could delegate this." And then also, kind of that control of, okay, but what if I let this go? This is what I've built. I mean, I think finding the people that you're going to build this with is really important. The people that you can trust, the people that you can, train to do these things and know that they are going to treat your business like yours is really difficult. And I think if you find those people, you hang on to them, you pay them well, you give them the time off that they want. And I think for me, like I said, kind of realizing that I might not be good at everything. And I have a couple of friends who have branched out and done this and gone on their own, and they're just like, "Why is this not working for me?" And I've had to kind of come in and critique, and I've been honest and say, "You're really good at taxes, and you're just not really good at managing a business." And I think that's okay. So what we did was we got him a business manager who came in and just helped him keep his life in order and get the platform back up to what he needed. And then he realized, I'm really not good at managing the business. So he hired a CFO, CEO to come in and kind of do these things. And he waited 6 years to do it because he was so, like, in turmoil about how he should be really good at this. If you're gonna run your business, you have to be. You have to be good at everything. And I was like, "No, you don't. You have to be good at finding people to help you be good. That's it. You just have to find the people that are gonna help you be good." And so it took him a bit and he went backwards a little bit and then was like, "All right, I'm gonna bite the bullet." And I think he cut his salary to hire on the person he needed, and then they took off, right? Because his business relations was good, his marketing was then good. They hired a marketing manager and all of these things kind of fell into place. And then here I was looking back at me and I was like, huh, all right. So what is Katie not good at and what does Katie need to change? And so I think that was about the time that I was kind of looking for something different and ended up finding my partner, was that I knew I needed somebody else stronger in like attestation and, some of the things that I'm less experienced in, and was like, okay, well, I'm okay that he knows more than me. I'm not actually bothered by the fact that, you know, both of these people on this podcast probably know more than me in a lot of areas, especially baseball or pickleball. And I don't know anything about those 2 things, but I'm okay with that, and I'm glad that, I have people around me who will help me be better at those things. So those are some tough lessons too.
No, you are right. I mean, that is a tough lesson because I know not only, there's a couple of things. One, what I'm not good at and what we could find better people at. And two, what I don't like to do. Like, yes, we've all been there where we had to sweep the floors, clean off the rings of coffee after someone left. I get a mark, but get to the point where you're in your unique ability, you're in your element, and you're going to perform the best. It feels so good. I love now we have people on our team that are way better than me at preparing tax returns, and I feel so good about
Yeah.
talking to a client doing a tax plan or tax projection and knowing that I'm not even thinking twice if they do, for instance, a cost segregation study, that it's going to hit the tax return exactly how it needs to. I don't have to babysit it. I'm not fighting the software right now. And that's the sign of great leadership. When you could bring in people, complementary skill sets that could do things, you know, as a firm owner, not only better, but accepting that they're going to do it differently than you, but still could get a
Yeah.
better result.
Yeah.
That's hard to deal
Yeah.
with sometimes.
I
So
don't believe that. I don't believe that, Chris. No, no, just kidding. I think again, there is also a certain type of person that goes out on their own, and I think you kind of get the people who are a little bit more rogue and who are going to do things their way. And I think that's amazing because that's probably where we are going to do really good. I've never been really great at putting me inside of a box and making me follow every rule and the expectation. And I follow IRS rules and all the time, right? But when I got into this, again, that experience with that firm where there was a spreadsheet being issued and my name was at the bottom every week. You could see everybody's performances. And I looked at that and I thought, that can't be right. Like, who does that? Who makes sure that the bottom guy stays down at the bottom every week? And it was me, right? And I was like, I'm not a bad person. I'm not a bad worker. I was like trying everything I could to be there every waking hour that I could and do my best, and it wasn't good enough. And I think when I think about this, that's the stigma I want to break. Is that everybody else, majority of the world still thinks we should be working 60 hours right now. And the fact that I'm going to a Blazers game with my kid tonight was like, oh, you have time for that, but you don't have time for my taxes. I have gotten comments like that where I've had to say, well, people are before paper. The people in my life, including myself, are more important than the paper that you have in your hand. And that doesn't devalue your paper. It does mean that everybody in this office is more important than your piece of paper. And and I'm not hurting your feelings by saying that. I'm actually trying to say that I think you want a healthy Katie doing your taxes. I think you want a well-rested Katie doing your taxes, not the 60, 70 a week, hour a week driven Katie who's exhausted and was here till 10 o'clock last night. That's not the Katie you want doing your taxes, right? And I don't know why we can't convince people of that, but that's the expectation. And so breaking that mold with the client is painful. And then we don't want to do it. We're people pleasers. We want to make everybody happy. So we're gonna get that return done and we're gonna stay late. And I've just had to say, I'm not. I'm so sorry. I'll be back here tomorrow at 9. See you then. Yeah.
I had this exact conversation with my wife, my son, my little one. Speaking of baseball, had a baseball game Tuesday night. I have this week, and when I had my aha moment, and I'm not missing. You know, there are times we miss stuff. Like we both make that commitment to go to tax posting. We make the commitment to. I'm not missing if I can. I'm not missing rehearsals and games and stuff. And we were just talking, and she's like, you know what's crazy? I mean, let's say 12 years ago, 13 years ago, you would have never been here. I'm like, I know. And I was remembering when we used to keep timesheets, and I have burning images of this so long ago. We were on QuickBooks Desktop, okay? But we were in a hosted environment, looking at my timesheet saying, I worked over 100 hours this week. And that didn't even include my drive to and from the office because we weren't virtual at the time. And now my kids are kind of your kids' ages. I think you might have a couple younger ones, but I'm thinking a couple high schoolers in a elementary. And I'm thinking, my kids are like, what, Dad? I'm like, you don't understand this, because I caught myself in that. My motivation was good because I was trying to support them, but I was caught in that old firm model. And yeah, I'm glad I snapped out of that a long, long time ago. But like you're saying, it's crazy to judge people on that. That's ridiculous. But I kind of judge myself.
We just put the baseball games on the calendar. We leave early. My front desk gal leaves early for baseball games. Really, we don't really have to say no unless there's a huge conflict and 4 of us are gone out of the office, and we just make sure we coordinate, what's happening. There's just no reason. I look at other people and I think, do you miss your kids' baseball game for work? Well, no, I work 9 to 5. Well, that's cool. Me too, right? So that, I just don't know where that gets broken off. And I do think it's getting better. I do think we're talking about it more. And there are people who are trying to say this over and over and over. And there are people living the life and doing it. But, I mean, I had a client came in and was like, I just want to know where my tax return is. And I was like, oh, it's the second time you stopped in. Like, we're still working on stuff. We have hundreds of people stuck in here. If I stop to give you an update every time. And she looked at me like I was just crazy. that I couldn't tell her the date her stuff would be done in. And I said, well, this guy here, and he's a long-time client, he took 5 hours. And, I mean, I don't know that until I get in his room, and he's laughing at me. And this gal was kind of like, well, I just understand what my stuff is done. And I got done. And so we do have a policy that at the end of the year, we want to offboard 10 people. We get to nominate 10 people. And I kind of winked at my front office gal, and I was like, put her on the list. And I'm funny and facetious, but maybe not at the same time, because I don't come to your work and ask you when you're going to get me that dentist appointment. And I don't come to your work and ask you why my prescription is not ready. Like, I'm not bothering you in these other times. I'm just waiting patiently. And you know what? I say this to my kids: waiting is hard. Thank you for being so patient. I literally sometimes have to say this to clients. And I just don't know another industry where this is happening, where we are being treated like we're not working enough, when I am, by golly, I'm hitting 60+ hours a week, and it's not enough for you. So I do think it's a social expectation, but I also think the industry is weird right now. As we have talked about this, there are more people exiting this industry and retiring than there are people entering. And so the lines are going to get longer, and the tax returns are going to take more time. And I don't think people care to stop and hear that or understand. I think they just want their stuff done. And, and that's the best that they can do. I try to inform them of the reason it's taking so long, and that we are always doing the best we can. So I think changing some of those social expectations and informing people is something that everybody has to do for us all to win, right? We all have to get on the same page.
Right, absolutely. No, you've got communication solves all problems. I'm going to take you to a fun question, kind of a fun question. I don't know. I think it's fun. And then jump back into kind of how you're building your business. Do you remember landing like your first client? Like someone that feeling like they're really going to pay me to do this? Like me personally, not my firm, or no?
Yeah, I do.
What was it?
Uh-huh.
Without
They
telling
were,
our name or anything, but can you tell us a little bit about it?
yeah, they were a large butcher shop in town, and they had tons of books that were really messy, and tax returns that they'd been paying some grandiose amount down south that were just egregiously wrong. And I remember being like, oh my goodness. So what do I have to do first? I have to fix the book. And then I was like, I have to amend this tax return. I had to make this list. And I kind of remember at some point feeling overwhelmed. And I did remember thinking, what if I have questions? What if I can't do this? And then I thought, well, I guess I'll just do it. And if I get in it, right, I'll figure it out. I never really had a moment where I was just absolutely stumped, but they are still a long-term client. And I've actually passed them off now for some more internal, like, CFO stuff with another friend, because they need a little bit more than what I can offer them. And they're grateful for it. And we have a really great relationship. And that was, I mean, they were with me for probably eight years. But maybe a little piece of me is just like, I love that client extra. I don't know why. They were always patient with me. They were always good to me. But probably because they were that first one that just gave me that, like, you're going to do this and we need help. And yeah, they're still amazing people to this day, but I'm glad they're in good hands too.
Obviously, we talk about kind of going off on your own. I like that you guys do, you're pretty full service with your clients. What, talk about your pricing and packaging and what's like working for you now. What in your practice? Because that's the other thing is someone thinking about going off on their own. It's tough making the menu, right? It's tough setting those prices, because we know you only have one time to show value to a client, and that's in the beginning. Our clients, our biggest struggle clients are legacy, quite frankly, our legacy clients that have been with me for 22 years now. They're not paying the prices that we've adjusted them, but they're definitely not paying market prices. But it also reflects, if it weren't for them, we wouldn't have the team we have. So yeah, what's working for you now? Pricing and packaging, and where's your kind of sweet spot?
Yeah. So we will do like a payroll bookkeeping package for, like, the lowest is 500, and that's the starting. And then, I kind of had this open market I do a lot of corporate returns, not a big fan of partnership. I like corporate returns, and I do a lot of those. But what I was finding was that I probably do the internal bookkeeping for probably 90 of them, and there's another 10 to 15 that they just bring me these books at the end of the year. And I didn't always have this policy, but recently have adopted the policy that I just won't be doing those taxes anymore because there's so much cleanup in January, February because their bookkeeper says they tied everything out and that their books are clean and there's loans that are still not, balanced out and the interest hasn't been accrued. And so I've this last year actually said, I'm so sorry, this is it. I'll do your books this year, but after this, if I don't do your bookkeeping and I can't keep it clean and I can't tax plan for you and we're not doing the whole package, I'm really not doing it. So I do think we kind of switch this over a little bit to where I'll offer some, mid-year evaluations, some fractional CFO and some tax planning kind of wrapped in there. Because this is newer for us, I think what we're doing with a few of these is we're just doing a subscription model for about 5 of them right now at $2,000 a month. And we will do all of those things throughout the year for them. And I think that will be the lowest we will go. I think some of them are really more going to be 2,500 or 3,000 a month if we offer more CFO services. And then a corporate tax return, probably about $2,000. An individual tax return that's basic is going to be 500. I do have a few legacy clients that came with me who have followed me, like you said, for years. And some of them were just grandmas with a couple of retirement forms. There's a few that I slip in there for like a $300 return. And it's mostly because I just love them to pieces and I'm not going to have them go down to the H&R Block down the road. But everybody else who's coming in is paying those, those prices. And that was a hard adjustment. We actually lost a very large portion of people that went when we went from the 250 to the 500 really quick. And I did this, keep in mind, I switched firms, right? So it was really like I exited my old firm and that was what we were charging. And so now we're charging this. We lost a lot of clients, but I will also then tell you, and we are all thinking this, I'm just going to say this. So the client who was paying the crap money was the worst client anyways. The client who was willing to pay for your time and values you and is going to pay you this $700 for that basic tax return is really, really a great client. Because they know that you just made them sleep better at night and they know that you just saved them and that they don't have to see you for a whole nother year and they're fine with it. To grasp that concept was like, I like to do those small guys and you get the grouchy people and I have to pay that bill of 300 and pretty soon I was like, the people who pay the 500 don't care. They're not grouchy at all. Why? Explain this to me.
The way and everyone goes through that. I agree 100%. If you're listening to this, if you're hearing me, you're listening to this. I hate when people say that. Why did I just say that? If they weren't listening, they wouldn't have heard this, and I wouldn't say if you're listening. If you've ever, let's say you've had a wedding. Let's say you've even had a New Year's Eve party, or you've had the birthday party for a child of yours. You've got your go-to friends are absolutely invited, and they're going to show up and they're going to be great. Then you get to that point where, gosh, if I invited Fred runs around with Joe. And gosh, if I don't invite Joe's wife plays pickleball with my wife. Let's just invite these two. They're the fringe invitees, right? There could be anything.
Yeah.
They're the ones that don't RSVP or don't RSVP and show up.
They don't bring any food.
They
definitely don't bring an appetizer.
They have to. They're like bringing their kids because they couldn't find a babysitter. Like you're paying in the butt guests that you were like. But the bottom line is, everyone that was a fringe guest to your party, your event, in your heart you shouldn't have invited them, but you did because you thought you had to. Ends up being your worst guest. It's not your best buddy, and then the people your go-tos, your ride or diers that are a problem. So that's the way I look at it. Like, look, man, if it's not a heck yeah, it's a no. That's life. I was part of Bigger Pockets for a while. I'm still in the community, but I'm not like a paying vendor or anything. And Bigger Pockets is a huge real estate investing community. And there's a guy that started it who came to speak to our group a couple of times, our real estate investor group. And he just said, look, I changed my life when I took this motto. It's not a hell yeah, it's a no. And I felt like my wife and I were terrible at like, Katie, let's say you and your husband are like, hey, we're going to go to this concert in August. Like, do you guys want to go? And I'm like, I really don't like that band, but it kind of sounds fun. It's in August. So I'll just say, yeah. And then it gets a week to, they're like, gosh, I don't even like this artist. I don't want to go to this concert. It's 100 degrees out in Nashville and humid. It's outdoors. So in other words, if I wouldn't say yes to this tomorrow, then I'm not saying yes to it now, just because it's in a few months. So anyway, So if you're listening to this, like Katie said, you've got those clients, the grouchy ones. It's a very friendly way of putting it. They're probably a minute sliver of your revenue, and they're not worth the headache. So we all have them.
No, they're gonna get you on the nomination list to be ejected for the end of the year is what's gonna happen in
Yes.
Katie's firm.
The,
We're filling that list up real fast.
the transfer portal. They're going to be put in the transfer portal, and you'll be friendly. You know what? And it's so easy to send them a note, an email, a text, whatever, letter, like, hey, we know you. We know you weren't that thrilled with or whatever. We don't think we're a great fit for you anymore. We understand that the financial commitment for tax preparation was a little bit that you don't say anything to me, like you weren't comfortable with it, and we really want you to find a firm that fits your needs better. And goodbye.
Yeah,
That's all.
yeah, exactly.
And then they'll probably go and be like, I can't believe these people, and then everyone's going to consider their source.
Something else I thought of is just like, there are really great resources out there for people who are thinking about, taking this leap or have already done it. And I love Jason Stass. He always has like a really great evaluation of softwares and things that you need, like basic stuff to start up. And it's not as extensive as you would think. We do use Tactome, and I know that there's like Canopy and Carbon and like a few other ones that are amazing. It keeps my life in order, and I don't actually think Tactome's any better than anything else. I just think you need something. You need to have something that keeps you with a pipeline and organization and communication with your client. And they're not that expensive. So for people who are kind of considering this, watch a couple of videos on, Jason. He evaluates these for accountants and is in our back pocket to be like, this is the best one for you. This one's not worth your money. And really, looking at the 4 things that you might need, which would be your tax software and, your practice management and, Microsoft 365. Like, I really think the list isn't as daunting as it needs to be. And there's a few other ones that, of course, like I think you and I use, like I use Loom for videos, but they're all really easy to find and efficient. But I would say, reaching out and looking at, like, once you click on Jason's stuff, there's a bunch of other things under his profiles that have softwares and even just some of your podcasts of like, they're not for new content, basically of new firm owners, but you don't know what decision you should be making for this, or you want a little bit of help. There is a plethora of people out there who will respond and help and give information and guide, because I think that people like you and I are like, please, people, join us in this industry. We want to all be successful. There's actually enough room for all of us. I'm not intimidated by, somebody else who has different clients than me, and that I can give clients to other people if they're not, a good fit here. And there is enough for everybody. So I think for those people who are pondering or maybe have already done it, just, considering that, find some resources, go to some of these conferences, ask some questions. People will help. They will give you advice, and, take it like a grain of salt. But, also, those are the people who have done the wrong, and they're learning how to do the right. So we've all done it, every single one of us, right?
Yeah, a lot of people paid a lot of tuition. That's funny, because my next question was going to be about tools and technology and processes that have saved you time. I would say, I agree on, we use Canopy and use Tactome. You make a decision, make it the right decision. A lot of them have their pluses and minuses. You're just like a spouse. You're not going to find the perfect one. You got to find, like what you said with the partner, 80% fit, right? Because we could live with that. 80% is pretty good, and you could fill in the gaps. Taxposium is amazing. It is, it can be expensive. It's and so if that's not where you're at this point in your journey, no problem. Honestly, I would, when I first started up, I went to the IRS nationwide tax forums. Now, the level of educational content, IRS isn't our sponsor, are they? Isn't like that that a long-time firm owner is going to look for. Here's what happens. And John's been with me many times on these events. We spend a half our time in the trade show. So like you're saying, Katie, you need a building block of a CRM. Go talk to the 4 or 5 players, but go in with what you're looking for, because they're all going to seem really shiny and nice. Go in for a tax prep, right? And say, hey, ProTax Connects is pretty expensive, but maybe Drake, it might be a good fit for you. There's no wrong answer. Go in there, in with the pandemic, the positive of the pandemic, as far as the conferences are, like, most of them are virtual. The people at the conferences, I've yet to really run into too many people. There's a couple of grouchies there, but How many people go to these conferences and say, I don't want to talk to anyone for 3 or 4 days? Why would you go?
And Chris, if I can actually build on that a little bit too, which I thought was super interesting. Again, I've kind of been sitting here riding the pine for 40 minutes or so. But, going to those conferences, it is really interesting because even, speaking from somebody's seat that is not a CPA, is not somebody that will ever file a tax return for another human being as long as I live, because I have people like you that'll actually do it right. I don't think that I've ever actually witnessed any conversations at any tax professional focused conference or even event where people are standoffish, where they don't want to share information. And the reason I say that is I think y'all kind of have that understanding of there is so much work for everybody that there's not really a competitive nature on, oh, I don't want to give away my secret sauce because, somebody's going to steal it and they're going to take all my clients, where, you can go to a number of them in any industry and there's a little bit of, keeping things close to the chest because they are afraid of that competition, I think, in some sense. But it is really cool to see that, in your industry, because people almost are very proud of when they have something that's working really well, or they're proud of their good clients, their processes, their growth, everything about that. And they want to share it. And I can say this too, that I've probably only seen it maybe once or twice in a couple of years here, that somebody is kind of arrogant about it, right? Most people are proud of it, but not, they're not saying, oh, well, I'm the best. It's saying, hey, our team has done very good with this. So just, kind of adding it in there too. If somebody's looking to go to one of those conferences, to get information and has never been before, definitely don't be afraid, because that is the one industry that is more welcoming to more people because they're needed and people realize that.
Hey, most of us were nerds our entire life, so because we like math, so we're just happy to be talking to people.
I'm going to get you an abacus and a pocket protector for Christmas.
I want to touch on, like, you did say NATP is kind of expensive, but some other things and avenues that I did in addition to that was like your local and state, meetups. And Washington State has a meeting and a greeting once every quarter, I think. And then actually, me and a couple other gals down in Portland have gotten on like LinkedIn and started a page there and just found people local to the Portland area. And once a quarter, not including tax season, we go down to like a little clubhouse, and it's got like 10 different vendors of like food trucks. And we sit and we all just sit for 2 or 3 hours and we just talk dumb, nerdy tax stuff. And I've met some really, really green people who, like, there's one guy who's been doing this for 3 months on his own. And he is like, I don't even know what I'm doing, right? And we've just been like, go here, do this, try this software. Do you need me to help you with this? And it's free, right? Like, that's free. You buy yourself some street tacos and you sit and you talk about accounting and taxes. And so I think just making sure that you look at all avenues, whether they're expensive or free, like the local stuff is great. I've actually reached out to one gal in town here, and I have met up with her, another CPA, and I'm just like, hey, can we make sure that we're like, if I can't do the fractional CFO stuff, we're the only two in town that will, can I just give them to you? And, if there's no capacity. And she's like, sweet, no competition in there whatsoever. Like, I think she's great. I think she's amazing. She's doing a great job. I'm going to keep feeding her if she needs it. And if I can do it, I will. And I think that's, like, I have called other tax preparers and been like, hey, what do I do with this Oregon situation? Can you tell me? And they're like, oh, yeah. But I never would have had that 5 years ago had I have kind of not gotten myself out there and networked and found a few people in my back pocket. And these same people have called me back and been like, I'm in tax dome and I can't figure out how to do this setting. And then I walk them through the setting and then we're like, oh, we're even. You help me do the Oregon. But, I just think finding that group is free. And that is something that's actually really valuable too. You can even put a price on how cool that is. So
No, I love it. And I love that we're talking about, we always talk collaboration over competition. I mean, that's one of our foundational pieces here. And we talked a lot about boundaries, even in our mastermind group. We talk about boundaries equal power, and you got to say no to say yes. So there's a lot of these themes. And I agree. Locally, there's probably a tax professional chapter locally that you can get involved with. So it's
Yep.
you're going to get out way more than you put into it. And that's kind of the good thing. Well, as we're kind of the plane starting to descend, I've got some questions, a few more questions for you. Just thinking about the last 10 years. I know obviously 8 of it you've been a firm owner. What's your biggest win that you've had? If you could say one big win.
Yeah, but I think somewhere along the line, somebody told me and looked at me that there would be no way I would be able to run a business, be a mom, and, be on my feet still. And I remember that person, and I remember scoffing at them, and I'll be also being like, oh, they're probably right. And, you know, 10 years later, I have moments when it's not easy, and I have moments when I would like more sleep. But realistically, I look back and I don't think this is easy, and I don't think everybody can do this, and it is for everybody, but I am doing it, and that's pretty cool to just be able to say, when I was a kid, I used to say, I want to own my own business, I want to have a family, and I want to build a house. I've literally done all those things, and I'm 41, right? Like I've literally I have more dreams. I'm gonna come up with more things, guys. The list is gonna get longer, but to be able to say that I really kind of have done the majority of what I've always wanted to do, like life-wise, I'm I'm crushing it right now, right? I'm feeling good about that. Yep.
Absolutely. I love it. Is there a book? And we talk about resources as far as like professional organizations, and you mentioned a resource as far as in the accounting field, but is there a book or podcast or anything is kind of you swear by, you really, and it doesn't even have to be accounting related. Obviously, mine is The Gap in the Game because I talk about this darn book all the time and who, not how. One day I have a mission to meet the meet the guys that wrote that book because I'm forever thankful. But do you have one?
This is gonna sound like paid advertisement, but on the nights that I am here at work late, I turn on your podcast and I turn it sideways and I watch you and John and I just go through the episodes, and whether I think I know the criteria or not, I let it play and I listen to F Corps and all the stuff that, what, if I pick up one thing that I'm like, didn't know that, right? I'm happy to do that. I'm kind of a nerd and I don't really do a lot of other things besides like live at the baseball fields in this time of year and watch my accounting podcast. And sometimes I watch Jason stats because he has like really funny things in there that again nobody wants to say or make fun of. And like the bad clients or the situations we've gotten in, and then like, where's my tax return? Is it done yet? He's got a really funny one that's like, how about now? And like I'm like, oh my God, like I have to turn on those right now to get myself through the next 3 weeks and be like, I watch some really dumb Jason Death videos to like know that somebody else feels what I feel right now and that we're all going to survive. Those are my go-to right now. And then, the good old, I'm actually finishing my CPA exam. So good old CPA books is what I'm doing right now. I don't think anybody else wants a piece of that right now, but that's what I'm doing. John? No.
Nope, that is all you.
No, that's wow. We just had a team member pass this fourth part of the CPA. He's been with us 7 years, started right out of school, and we're so proud of him. And it's a huge accomplishment. So
that's cool.
You're going to get that. Yes.
That's super cool. You got to see him go all the way. Yep.
Yeah. Now he's moved into a different role. He can, and we're building what we call his pod. So we're trying to build a book of, business within our business that's kind of his, instead of traditional, okay, I've got my license, I'm going to go fly, I'm going to go do my own thing. So, but yeah, that's what we're working on. What advice would you give someone who's just on that edge of taking the leap? And then I only have one more question after that, but it's an easy question.
I think it's gather those thoughts, write them down, and do it. If you were there and you are on the edge, it's probably meant for you. And like I said, I wish I would have done mine so much sooner. I could have probably written down my game plan and had some more things in mind for when I did mine. But realistically, if you're thinking about it and you're there, it's because it's probably meant for you. You're that person who has the drive and the desire to do it. You're probably willing to put in the hard work. Yep.
Awesome. Final question. It's an easy one. How can listeners connect with you? Obviously, this is an accounting and tax professional podcast, so we're probably not going to have people saying, okay, I need help with this tax return, or bookkeeping. But yeah, how obviously you're open to connecting. If you go to Taxposium, there's going to always be room at the happy hour for anyone listening. We're going to do another event next year, but how can someone connect with you?
Probably the easiest way is my LinkedIn account. That's where most of I helped people with mentorship or whatever is the LinkedIn account. I did give it to John. I don't know if he'll post it in the bottom of this or what the best way is, but that's the best way to contact me.
Absolutely. John always does a great job putting it all in the show notes. And
well, I have to do something because I bring zero tax knowledge to this. So if I can't bring comedy,
are you even doing anything back there, John?
No, I just hang out. I just take this in. So it's
Look good.
really corny. You know how I'm the king of dad jokes. If anybody does listen to the Teaching Tax Flow podcast, I think that was the one that was Kitty had mentioned that she listens to. We have a good time on there. So I said something one time and my wife goes, you love your jokes. You're kind of like the scrub daddy sponge, where I just like take it in and then you like squeeze it and something dumb comes out. I'm like, okay, that is a great way to put it. So that's what I do here. But
Yeah,
honestly, Katie,
we're excited for you.
we were super excited to do this topic with you. So obviously the day that this recording, the show's going live, to the world here, it's April 15th. So the quote unquote,
yeah.
just to piss Chris off, we're going to call it tax day because I know he loves when we call it that. So we appreciate your time. We know you're, this is not the easiest time for a lot of tax professionals, but I think being able to take the time and your willingness to do it during such a crazy time, kudos to you for, being organized enough to be able to take a little break. So we appreciate it is what I'm saying.
I loved being here, and I know I'll see you guys around at some conferences and wherever we meet up.
Absolutely. Well, we'll let Chris go because I know he ain't doing any tax returns, and Katie will let you get back to business. So we appreciate it so much, though. Honestly, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. And anybody that's been listening to this, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to us at the MRR Institute. Literally just search it, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can reach out to Katie. Her contact's in the bottom of the show notes as mentioned, as well as, reach out to Chris. If you have any specific questions, looking for a referral partner, anything like that, he is a wealth of information and can direct you to the best people possible. So as we always close out a show with some form of outro, we call it. We'll see everybody back here again on the Mr. R Show.
You've been listening to the Mr. R Show, presented by the MRR Institute. For more content like this, be sure to check us out on YouTube for weekly expert tips, and don't forget to subscribe to this podcast to stay updated on the latest strategies for scaling and modernizing your tax practice. Looking for more? Contact us at mrrinstitute.com for practice resources, coaching opportunities, and a peer-to-peer mastermind group. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
The content of this podcast does not constitute an offer of securities. Offerings can only be made through an offering memorandum, and you should carefully examine the risk factors and other information contained in the memorandum. The content provided is for educational purposes only. We encourage you to seek personalized investment advice from your financial professional. For all tax and legal advice, please consult your CPA or attorney. Investment advisory services are offered through Cabin Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cabin Securities, a registered broker-dealer.